Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Australian Army is Major Jennifer O'Brien. Today's Last Post ceremony commemorates the 80th anniversary of the Battle of Muir River and the Battle of Gamas, which were fought between Allied defenders and the invading Japanese forces during the Malayan Campaign of January 1942. Today we pay our respects to the men and women commemorated on the Roll of Honour and to the survivors who returned home. Shortly, we will tell the story of Private Ronald Norrie Lyle Alexander, who was killed during the Battle of Gamas. We warmly welcome representatives from the 2nd 15th Field Regiment Association, the 2nd 30th Battalion Association, the 2nd 19th Battalion Association, and Mr. John King, President of the Returned and Services League of Australia, ACT branch. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families who love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, during the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 102,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Private Ronald Norrie Lyle Alexander. Ronald Alexander was born in Karaki, New South Wales on the 11th of August 1911, the son of Edwin and Sarah Alexander. After working for some time as a farmer, he enlisted in the 2nd Australian Imperial Force on the 19th of June 1940 at Lismore, New South Wales. He soon joined a training battalion, and after an episode of measles in September, in mid-November was allotted to the newly established 2nd 30th Battalion. With men drawn from Dubbo, Goulburn, North Sydney, Randwick, Walgrove and Wagga Wagga, the first commander of the battalion, Lieutenant Colonel F.G. Blackjack Galligan, trained the men hard. They became known as Galligan's Greyhounds. The battalion was part of the 8th Division's 27th Brigade, the last AAF infantry brigade raised for service during the Second World War. At the end of July 1941, the main component of the 2nd 30th sailed to Singapore on board the Dutch ship Johan van Oldenbarnevelt as part of the convoy carrying the 27th Brigade. The battalion then went to Malaya, where it would soon put what it had learnt into practice. Just after midnight, on the 7th, 8th of December, Japanese forces landed at Singora and Patani in Thailand and Kota Bharu in northern Malaya. After advancing down the Malay Peninsula, after a week, the Japanese 5th Division was approaching the inland town of Jamas. On the 14th of January, a company of the 2nd 30th ambushed the Japanese at the Jemanche Bridge, 12 kilometres west of Jamas. Caught by surprise, they suffered 70 killed and 57 wounded, while the Australians only had 1 killed and 9 wounded. The next day, the Japanese resumed their advance towards Jamas and tangled with the main body of the 2nd 30th Battalion. Bloody fighting ensued as artillery was brought to bear. Japanese tanks were engaged and stopped, whilst the infantry fought it out, sometimes at close quarters. But heavily outnumbered, the Australians were eventually forced back, and by mid-afternoon on the 15th, had to withdraw from Jamas altogether. In 2 days' fighting, the Australians suffered 81 casualties, including 17 dead. Japanese casualties are thought to have amounted to a few hundred. Among those killed on the 15th of January at Jamas was Private Ronald Alexander. He was 30 years old. The remainder of the battalion would fight in the defence of Singapore until its surrender a month later. The survivors became prisoners of war and were used as labour for work parties, first in Singapore, then in other parts of Japan's Greater East Asia co-prosperity sphere, working on the Bournemouth-Thailand Railway, as well as in Borneo and Japan. Over 300 men from the 2nd 30th died during captivity. Today, Ronald Alexander is commemorated at the Singapore Memorial, which bears the names of over 24,000 casualties of Commonwealth Land and Air Forces who have no known grave. His name is listed on the Roll of Honour to my left amongst almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. His photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Ronald Norrie Lyle Alexander, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We particularly appreciate your visit despite the challenges posed by COVID, and we wish you all a very pleasant evening.